Tom Cruise, another level. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. I have explained on numerous occasions how if you give the narcissist enough rope, the narcissist will hang themselves. This essentially revolves around the concept of collateral consequences. Owing to the fact that the narcissist that is lesser or mid-range is preoccupied with the moment without due consideration for what comes next, this means that invariably the narcissist will do certain things in that moment which will cause a collateral consequence, which will cause a problem for the narcissist at a later juncture. When that later juncture arrives, sometimes the narcissist is able to deal with it and thus kicks it further down the road, or nullifies the threat to control that it poses. But in many instances, there are two potential problems that arise for the narcissist. The first is that because they do this so often, eventually people start to see a pattern. They see that this person regularly generates problems. One instance viewed in isolation is invariably not seen. Two or three, possibly not given much attention. But when it happens over and over again, people start to realise. A classic example of this is Meghan Markle, where initially many people didn't necessarily see that she was problematic, or whether they did, they gave her the benefit of doubt. But now, with many years of public exposure, it is far clearer to see a repeated and sustained pattern of certain behaviours where she is problematic. Thus, her behaviour in the moment created a collateral consequence, which has then been seen by the world, which paints an overall picture. The second problem that arises is that the actual collateral consequence itself could prove particularly problematic for the narcissist. It might be a certain behaviour that results in the individual being cancelled. It might be that the individual relationship is destroyed. It could be that criminal proceedings and conviction follow. This is why, with many high-profile narcissists, you see that they effectively crash and burn. Many people would ask themselves, why did this person who seemingly have it all suddenly implode in the way that they did? It's a collateral consequence of their narcissism. But that is what is generally applicable to lesser and mid-range narcissists. For example, what we have seen has happened in relation to Harvey Weinstein, in relation to individuals such as Ryan Reynolds, whereby his reputation has taken a particular kicking as a consequence of his involvement with Justin Baldoni and his wife Blake Lively. Individuals who were once prominent and have fallen foul as the collateral consequences of either racked up or have become so horrendous in themselves that it's led to some form of repercussion. You've seen it, for instance, with Alec Baldwin, a succession of unpleasant behaviours which have outed him as a difficult individual. Look what happened to Amber Heard. But there are other narcissists that, notwithstanding their similarities, they continue to rise above the problems, and this is because they operate on a different level. And an article about Tom Cruise in the Telegraph demonstrates how he, despite there being accusations of quite simply being a weirdo, of having a checkered dating history, of being difficult to work with, he continues, of course, to create blockbuster movies, remain wealthy, and still, at 63, is viewed as being at the top of his game. Part of this is naturally down to the fact that he has ability. He's not the world's best actor, but he's far from the worst. He is also probably the last remaining genuine action hero that exists in cinema. I've explained before that his psychopathy assists him with regard to the determination, the stunts, and the sheer doggedness that he exhibits in relation to the fact that he does his own stunts most of the time. And with that creates a certain aura that surrounds him. But there are other aspects to his behaviour that you might have thought could potentially have proven problematic to him, because, as both narcissist and psychopath, those behaviours could result in other individuals finding themselves thrown by the wayside. How is it, then, that someone like Tom Cruise has remained in the position that he has? This is because he operates on a different level. In the opening sequence of Top Gun Maverick, Tom Cruise is informed that drones will soon replace fighter jet test pilots like him. The end is inevitable, the officer tells his character Maverick. Your kind are headed for extinction. The same could be said for many actors of Cruise's generation. Men who have, in the cultural shift that has occurred since Me Too, have been accused of sleaziness, controlling behaviour, egregious age gaps, and even abuse. Cruise, meanwhile, has managed to glide above it all, like the movie stars of the past, despite having his own undeniably checkered dating history. The 63-year-old now finds himself single again after news broke this week that he and Cuban-American actress Ana de Armas, aged 37, had split up. The affair wasn't exactly Burton and Taylor. The couple were first seen having what was described at the time as a work dinner in London in February, and were then spotted rather chastely holding hands in Vermont in July. Cruise, who has fashioned himself as an honorary Briton, is also said to have taken the actress to an Oasis concert at Wembley Stadium and to David Beckham's 50th birthday party. The official reason for their split, according to a source in the Daily Mail, was their impressively dedicated work ethic. They ended up realising they should keep it professional because they weren't able to figure it out as a couple. They wanted to save the future of their friendship and their movie, said the source, nodding to the upcoming supernatural thriller Deeper, which they both star in. Which, of course, is facade management. What is clear is that no matter how many failed relationships Cruise accrues, the press and the public are inclined to see him in a benevolent light. Part of this is because of the way the star, who has not had a long-term girlfriend since he split with Katie Holmes in 2012, conducts his love life. Cruise is a serial monogamist, says one industry insider, which means that rather than flitting from supermodel to supermodel, he will find one actress who is in a career upswing. They all seem to be rising stars when he gets together with them, and who is younger than him, but not too young, and he will be very solidly with her for a certain number of years or months. Now, there is no doubt that Tom Cruise enjoys a range of differing relationships, given his status as narcissistic psychopath. However, he is clever about what the world finds out. Unlike the mid-ranger who tries to keep it quiet, but fails as a consequence of a lack of skill and expertise, unlike the lesser that just rides through life like a wrecking ball, he, as a middle grader, exhibits a far greater level of control over both himself and those around him, resulting in the fact that he does as he pleases, but the world does not get to know about it. He therefore creates the facade of serial monogamist and is clever enough to utilise the relevant actress who is in a career upswing, so that fits in with his facade and is useful by way of character trait acquisition. As you'll know, Cruise has been dogged by rumours for years that he is a closeted gay, yet no actual evidence has ever been provided to support that. Part of the effectiveness of the facade, if that information is true. What Cruise is very good at is that he adopts various personas as he moves through life. He's the golden boy. He's the action hero, the tortured man at different points of his career. And what he can do, by virtue of what he is, and a very skilled version of that, is to build up the persona and then dismantle it and move on to another one. He has this cyclical thing of constructing an image everyone loves, the facade, before moving on to something else, says the Film Insider. His relationships weirdly mirror this pattern. He will enter a coupleship that is all desperately tasteful facade, and that will later be dismantled without rancour, assertion of control, and maintenance of control at a high level. And even when he is single, there is never any insinuation that he is tomcatting around in the same way his peers are, management of reputation through assertion of control. Cruise's celebrity relationships stretch back to 1985, when he met the megastar Cher at Sean Penn and Madonna's wedding. He was 23 and she was 38. Although their fling lasted less than a year, Cher later described him as one of her top 5 lovers. In 1987, he married the actress Mimi Rogers, who is said to have introduced him to the Church of Scientology, and who later implied that Cruise's catapult into fame, following the release of Top Gun, overshadowed her and her career. 2 years later, he fell for his co-star on Days of Thunder, a young Australian called Nicole Kidman. Cruise denied having an affair with Kidman, denial, first line of the twin lines of the narcissistic defence, but soon as the ink was dry on his divorce papers, the couple went public, segueing from one relationship to another. True to the pattern, Cruise would go on to repeat this for the next 4 decades. Kidman was, at that point, far less famous than her boyfriend, and only 22 years old. Their relationship, which ended in 2001, was the longest of his life, and arguably led to the most critically acclaimed period in both of their careers, and that famous photograph of Kidman leaving the divorce lawyer's office pumping the air in relief. According to former Scientologists, their marriage floundered when the church decided that Kidman was a suppressive person who could jeopardise the spiritual well-being of Cruise and lead Isabella and Connor, the 2 children they adopted, astray. The Church of Scientology denied these allegations. Shortly after their divorce, Cruise entered a relatively brief relationship with Spanish actress Penelope Cruz, who he starred with in 2001's Vanilla Sky. The early part of the new millennium was not an easy period for him. He publicly fell out with Steven Spielberg in 2004 when he put up a booth promoting Scientology on the set of War of the Worlds. Then he criticised Brooke Shields for taking medication to cure her postnatal depression, and briefly lost his movie star gloss, instead becoming a figure of ridicule. The period culminated in a 2005 Dominic Dunn profile in Vanity Fair headline, "Has Tom Cruise lost his marbles?" A year after that, he met 26-year-old Dawson's Creek star Katie Holmes, who became pregnant months later. The couple had a highly publicised wedding at a castle outside of Rome, and Cruise seemed very happy, as evidenced by his frantic jumping up and down on Oprah Winfrey's sofa shouting, "I'm in love." He was widely mocked for this, with people calling it over the top, embarrassing, and some suggested disingenuous, and the fallout led to the star rethinking the way his entire publicity department operated. Notice again the flexibility of the creator, recognising that something did not work and rethinking the approach. Cruise's marriage to Holmes eventually ended in divorce after 5 years, with the actress reportedly feeling overwhelmed by the role Scientology played in their lives. Scientologists were said to have moved in with the couple, and fearing its influence on their daughter Suri. In the divorce, she was given sole custody of Suri, who is now 19 and is said to rarely see her father. And yet, despite the cult-like religion, multiple divorces, estranged children, and younger girlfriends, very little criticism ever seems to stick to the man. Cruise is not a celebrity in the modern sense, says Mark Bukowski, a PR guru who specialises in crisis management. While the rest of Hollywood overshares, lack of boundary recognition, he glides above it all with that fixed high-beam smile and an off-switch for shame. People forget that he's the final relic of the studio-era illusion and that he demands absolute control over the narrative, greater assertion of control, zero oxygen for scandal, nullification of threat to control, and a professional policy that suffocates inquiry, nullification of threat to control. He doesn't overshare because he doesn't need to. He doesn't overshare because of the high level of control that he asserts as a greater. This glossy exterior was largely constructed in the years after the Oprah Sophie debacle and has served him well. Stars come undone because too many people speak on their behalf, says Brokowski. With Cruise, only the myth speaks, and the man is almost incidental. His private life is a riddle. He's also built a force field out of spectacle, jumping off buildings, piloting jets, dangling from planes, but it's all distraction architecture. Again, as a consequence of his psychopathy, in the absence of fear, he's able to do these things and then harness it for the purposes of distraction from threats to control. Cruise has also worked hard to create a persona that is difficult to demonize or even sexualize. It's hard to conceive of Tom Cruise as a sexual being these days, says the film Insider. That was not true in the Eyes Wide Shut days, but now, even in the Mission Impossible films, he's not really romancing everyone. And in Top Gun Maverick, his storyline with Jennifer Connelly was sweet more than anything else. As a result, we don't really think of him this way, whereas DiCaprio has a track record of playing sleazebags, so unlike Cruise, we think of him as a man with human urges. As for someone like Ana de Armas, a young, beautiful woman with real star power, one could pose a question nobody would have asked 30 years ago. Why is she dating Tom Cruise? Well, on one level, it is certainly a massive profile boost, as if you are on his arm, you get coverage. And given the serial monogamy thing, it's a very low risk in terms of blowing up in a way that could be disastrous or unflattering. Either way, Cruise now finds himself single at the same time as his ex-wife Kidman. A few outlets have suggested this might be the moment to rekindle their romance, but given the water under the bridge, water that includes the fact her adopted children no longer speak to her, this seems highly unlikely. Equally unlikely is that Cruise will get cancelled anytime soon. He is impossible to dislike now, and I can't see him going wrong, says the film Insider. If he does some smaller but interesting roles in the next decade, then he can quietly retire, and the golden boy image will remain safe. And as for his dating life, perhaps like those fields at Glastonbury that need to be left fallow before springing back to life, Cruise will return soon enough with a new love interest. If so, it seems likely she'll be age-appropriate, beautiful, and with a career that is about to take off. Cruise recognised the value of the selection of the intimate partner primary source in an appropriate fashion, so that it does not cause a problem for him with regard to a threat to control. All through this article, the overriding aspect of this that allows Cruise to operate in the way that he does is that because he is at a different level with regard to the method of asserting control. His fame, his experience, his wealth, and what he is, all enable him to ensure that he exercises his own high level of control and that he ensures that that is asserted over those around him, resulting in the longevity, continued fame, and absence of damaging scandal. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.